Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. What can I get for you?
I want to put maple syrup on some stuff, maybe on some waffles, on some chicken. Maybe I put a little bit in my hair sometimes. I put it on pizza. Just some maple syrup.
Pull up to the second window and we'll see you next crime.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. I am John, here with Jamie. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Tried to go a little Wedding Crashers there, where they try to make up that they're entrepreneurs in charge of an emerging maple syrup conglomerate.
Dude, that was a deep cut. I did not realize that's what you were doing.
It's a good movie, but I mean, it is a segue because today is all about the syrup, as they say.
Do you like syrup?
Yeah.
Syrup? How do you say it? How do you say it if you were in Harlan?
Syrup. There are no vowels.
Have you ever had like real maple syrup, or are you like a, Betty Crocker kind of syrup guy?
I don't know where you get the real kind. From a maple tree?
Yeah. Well, you can buy it at the Walmarts.
I've never tapped into a tree.
It's like 30 times more expensive than the regular stuff.
Then no, I haven't had the expensive kind.
I've tried the expensive kind elsewhere, not in this house, and it's almost too pure, like I just like brown sugar, and this is just like, it's healthy, and I just don't.
Oh no, don't get that out of here.
I like the Betty Crocker. When I was a kid, they used to have a picture of a microwave on it, on the syrup bottle. You could throw it in the microwave, and then a picture would appear on the microwave on the bottle when it was hot enough to eat. Do you remember that?
No, but that's pretty advanced for when you grew up in the 1900s.
I could talk about syrup all day, but why don't you tell me a story about a syrup crime?
Yeah, so today's story takes us to Quebec, Canada, which is the home of one of the most unusual heists in history. And this is known as the Great Maple Syrup Heist. I wish we had some dramatic music behind that.
I feel like everything you should say from now on should end with A.
In 2011, in 2012, a team of thieves managed to steal approximately 2,700 tons of maple syrup from Quebec Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve, valued at nearly $18 million.
See, I told you. It was expensive.
It's one of the largest thefts in Canadian history. And I mean, we have bourbon reserves around here, but that's a lot of syrup, bro.
I like syrup just as much as the next guy, but my God, man, what's happening here? How profitable could that be? But apparently $18 million.
Yeah, it sounds pretty profitable.
Quebec is synonymous with maple syrup, and for a good reason. It produces 96% of Canada's maple syrup, which in turn accounts for 75% of the global market. That's insane. So one town has 75% of the world's maple syrup market.
I know if we ever go to war, that's who I'm invading Quebec for the syrup.
Okay. Maple syrup is so important that it's regulated by the Quebec Maple Syrup Producers, or QMSP, who sets quotas and maintain a strategic reserve to stabilize prices. I mean, are we talking about oil or syrup?
This sounds like an oil conversation. I was thinking the same thing.
In 2011, after a surplus, they increased their reserve, retiring a warehouse in St. Louis de Blandford, which is in Quebec, and apparently not actually St. Louis. It's St. Louis
in Missouri.
De Blandford.
Yeah.
And that warehouse became the epicenter of one of the most intricate and bizarre heists that the world has ever seen.
The heist was discovered in July of 2012 during an inspection of the reserve. There was an inspector that went in, and he noticed that one of the barrels was just suspiciously light. Normally, a full barrel weighs about 270 kilograms because metric system. But some of these barrels were almost empty and were really light. So he started opening a few and saw that they were actually filled with water instead of syrup, and some of the barrels were rusting, which doesn't happen when maple syrup's in them.
So syrup weighs more than water.
I
learned that in that paragraph. So the Quebec maple syrup producers called this place, and They also called the police, who launched a full investigation, and they quickly determined that it was an inside job. Over a 10-month period, a group of thieves had been sneaking into the warehouse, siphoning syrup from the barrels and replacing it with water. And they'd then transport the stolen syrup to New Brunswick, which is a province without Quebec's strict regulations, where they would then sell it on the black market and even would send some across to the U.S.
There's a black market for maple syrup.
I wouldn't have believed me. I wouldn't have believed it if you hadn't have told me.
Such an educational show. The ringleader of this operation was identified as Richard Vallières, who was known as the barrel roller.
Did they think maple they were syrup filled industry. With bourbon?
I don't know. That'd be the only reason we would buy it here, I would think. Essentially, he was somebody who skirted around the strict restrictions imposed by the QMSP. He learned about the reserve setup from a guy named Avik Caron, whose spouse co-owned one of the warehouses where they kept the reserve. During this investigation, Vallières admitted that he had been active in the black market syrup trade for over a decade. I would love to see that interrogation, pounding on the table. Where's the syrup?
Vallières and his co-conspirators argued that they were not really stealing. Rather, they claimed that due to the strict control over the supply and prices, it was unfair to smaller producers, likening the syrup regulations to a syrup cartel. So they saw the theft as a way to get even the playing field and then circumvent the system altogether. But of course, this was still a massive theft. Whether you believed it was theft or not, it was, and the police also saw it that way.
Did he think he was the Robin Hood of syrup?
Apparently.
Is that what we're doing here? The investigation was pretty intense. Police issued over 40 search warrants, conducted hundreds of interviews, and they traced the syrup sales across all of Canada and into the U.S. Out of the stolen syrup, authorities managed to recover 450 tons, though some had to be destroyed as it wasn't safe for human consumption. Eventually, 4 men were convicted, with Vallières sentenced to nearly 8 years in prison.
Jamie, I feel like this is a fake story. It just seems so bizarre that maple syrup would be such a hot commodity that it would draw this much interest from the thieves. But I guess you're willing to do anything to make a buck. Why not steal some syrup?
I guess if it's the main resource around there and you can leverage it, that's what they decide to do. But if you're involved in any type of black market syrup trade, then maybe give your boys a call.
I've got 2 maple trees in my backyard. Like, can I make $100 a year from that?
I don't know. I think you just have to stab a spigot into it, right?
Okay.
Is that how it works?
I'm going to go find a spigot. So I'll see you guys later.
All right. This has been a crime story in 10 minutes or less.
Would you like crime with that?
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.